Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, it's great to be back in the far walkways. I've been here many times, especially when our borough president was just a council member, and we learned how to be very good preachers on Sundays. So we've been out to this community many times, although I suspect Reverend Mullins would question that assessment. So I'm delighted to be in this church as well, a place of gathering, and we'll be talking about what this place has meant to all of us over this last decade. And I do want to give a special shout out to our current borough president, who's been a friend of mine for a very long time. And we've been to diners, we've walked the streets, we've really worked together to lift the people of this community up. So let's give a round of applause to our borough president, Donovan Richards. And our district attorney, Melinda Katz, has one of the toughest jobs. I think you probably thought borough president was tough, and the challenges that you face every day. We spent a lot of time together when you were borough president. Frequently you'd say, "Are you sure you're not running against me for borough president? You're spending so much time here in Queens." But no, you served so honorably in a tough situation. So let's give another round of applause to our district attorney, Melinda Katz. I need great partners in Albany, and in your Sully member, Cleo Anderson, I want to thank him for being such a powerful voice for the people you represent, and all the work that you continue to do. Which side are you on? Where's Cleo? Well, he was just with me a few minutes ago, so I'm sure he'll be joining us momentarily. We just took a walk and met some of the downtown businesses, so we'll see him. And Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers. She made it here yet? Okay. Literally left them on the street. I guess we went a little faster than they did. And of course, we'll be hearing from Reverend Dr. Leslie Mullins, and I know the First Lady's here as well, so let's give them a round of applause. I also have the dream team. I said when I became governor a little over a year ago, I'm going to assemble the best and the brightest. And I've found that with our Commissioner, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Jackie Bray, who's been through a lot with me. Our first week on the job together, dealing with Hurricane Ida and storms during the winter time and ice storms and power outages and all the things that come under the jurisdiction of being head of emergency services. Let's give a round of applause to Commissioner Jackie Bray. The GOSER Executive Director, Katie Brennan. You know a lot about this organization, Katie, and I want to thank you for all the work you've done tirelessly over many years to be part of building back a community that was just so battered by an unexpected storm, and I thank you for all the work you're doing and will continue to do. Also, our Commissioner of Environmental Conservation, I want to thank Basil Sagos for all the work he has done and will continue to do to build up the resiliency of our shoreline and everything we can do to make sure that we are prepared for Mother Nature and all that she brings to us. So we're here to talk about something, the word resiliency. It's resiliency of a coastline, it's the resiliency of our electric grid, it's the resiliency of buildings, but also, more importantly, it's about the resiliency of the human spirit. And that's what we saw on display. And that's why I took a little bit of extra time to walk the streets and talk to business owners and to ask them how they dealt with that incredible experience of having to be the face of a community, the barber shop, the little diners and coffee shops. They were the gathering place at a time when people didn't even have power. You walked into those stops and you could find out how to get your cell phone charged. They were there when the community needed them. All these years, they're still there. And as someone who helped start a couple of small little businesses and a little bit beaten down downtowns where I come from, make sure we continue to support them. They are our lifeblood. They were there when we needed them most. So whatever you can do to support our local businesses and also, be there for them. But let's not forget the fact Hurricane Sandy meant that there were 60 families that lost a loved one. 10 years later, you wonder what that daughter, that husband, that spouse, son would have looked like, what they would have done. You never forget. You never forget the loss of a loved one, ever, especially under circumstances that were so wildly unpredictable. So they live on in our hearts and our memories, and we can never forget as we come together on this 10th anniversary to talk about what happened and where we've gone from there. There were real people's lives that were lost, and that is something we'll continue to talk about as we go forward. And also the bravery of the first responders and firefighters, and they put themselves on the line even when perhaps their own homes were on fire. I mean, remember the images? It was just so horrific. And they still didn't stay to protect their own home. They went out to protect others. And that is selflessness like we've never seen before. And I want to honor all of them as well, especially in Breezy Point, which was, the horrific fires there still seared in our minds. And their courage will never be forgotten. And this devastation of our state will never be forgotten. But what do you do with that? People lost everything. They lost loved ones. They lost friends. They lost homes. They lost family heirlooms. I mean, the baby pictures, the wedding picture. And the damage is over $60 billion. And estimated of $600 million in property loss, destroyed over 300,000 housing units. Can you imagine that just being gone almost instantaneously? I mean, we have a real housing crisis now. What would it be if we never lost 300,000 all in one swoop? It's extraordinary how we're still paying the price of that storm. 2 million utility companies lost their power, or their customers lost their power. Thousands of roads closed, shuttered. Mother Nature was absolutely fierce and unsparing. And I remember I was a member of Congress working with your representatives from here at the time. And I thought it was the time when our country would stand up, just like we did after storms ravaged New Orleans, Katrina. But at the time, I was so, I would say, disgusted with the fact that our Congress wouldn't even give the money to help this community come back unless there was money found elsewhere in the budget. So I want you to know that. I was working to bring money here, even though I didn't even represent this area, because I knew how important it was. And to overcome that frustration, that sense that the other party couldn't even step up and help a community that was so desperate for help. So that is also a reflection that is still with me today. But Mother Nature, we saw the impact. We also saw what people have done, and that's why we're in this church today. We saw how God's people rose up all over this community to embrace each other and to take care of them and let them know they're going to be okay at a very real human level. That's why we're in this church. Reverend Dr. Leslie Mullings, I want to thank you on behalf of a grateful community a decade later. A decade ago, you weren't hosting a gathering like this. You were literally hosting the state's FEMA Operations Center. This was the place. This was the place. And you and your congregation emptied the church, got rid of all the seats and the lectors, everything. You invited FEMA in. It was the only building in the community with the lights on at the time. And one person from Virginia drove up a generator. That's why we were able to power this area. Somebody in Virginia made sure that this place could be a sanctuary to let people know that there is a place where the lights are on. And it became a beacon of light for this community in the greatest sense of every word. And for a long time, you helped feed over 3,500 people a day. 3,500 people a day, that's extraordinary. You distributed clothes and food and 70,000 cases of water, helped us get out and raised almost $7 million in relief funds. You helped raise that. And this community rose up. This community rose up so powerfully. A beautiful model to others of what you do when you're knocked down. You're knocked down hard. You rise up. You embrace hope. And you look out for each other. That's exactly what was going on in this space. And I'm grateful that you're able to rebuild yourselves and open up this space again and have this beautiful building that we're gathered in. And I want you to know that at the time, not everybody agreed with the decision to open up this church as a FEMA center. Reverend Mullings is smiling. I'm sure it wasn't time to smile back then. Time does heal, doesn't it, Reverend? People didn't think it was appropriate to use a house of God as an emergency center. But you knew better because God called you to say, this is how we serve the people of God in every way. And that's why I want to honor you today. So people like Reverend Mullins are not the type of people looking for recognition, but we're going to give him recognition in a few moments. He deserves it. He deserves it. And I know you all agree over there. Yes, let's give him a round of applause. But you took care of people's physical needs, spiritual needs, We also have to do something going forward, and that was the advent of the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery to oversee the distribution of $4.5 billion in federal recovery funds that eventually came after a lot of battles in Washington. And this was to make sure that we were ready for future storms. And in the Rockaways and Breezy Point, we made over $45 million investment in a community reconstruction program for drainage and damage assessment and management and workforce development and creating more generators. And it's all about long-term resiliency. You can deal with the aftermath immediately, but then you have to, what does long-term resiliency look like? It says you're doing things smart and you're getting ready for the next one. And we're investing and thinking about the future disasters that could do the very same. And of course, that comes down to the electric grid. It's too routine by now. Storm comes, power goes out, and you pray. That's not a strategy. That is not a life strategy. And we have invested, knowing that that is a vulnerability for our families and our businesses, invested over $19 billion in the electric grid to defend against extreme weather outages, and that they call the storm hardening of the grid. Storm hardening, you hear this a lot. What does that mean? It means we're going to be ready the next time. We'll do our very, very best. We're making it more resilient and adaptable. And also in the Rockaways, here's what we've done. $49 million to help elevate our substations, $10 million to help out with the Rockaways distribution circuits, because we know that this is coming again. We know it's coming again. I was a governor literally at just a couple of weeks, a week I think, last year, and Ida hit. Now you talk about these events being once a century event. Well, the last one we had was 10 years ago. Then we had Ida. And I walked through the streets of Queens with our representatives right here. I saw the flooded basements. I held the hands of people who were weeping when they saw all their life's possessions being literally washed down a drain, and those who lost loved ones because they were trapped in their homes. It happened. It happened here. It happens in Queens. And it has an effect on you. And it's a motivating effect. It says we must do everything we can in our power. So we can't just say there's one place, go sir, the Office of Storm Recovery is there for one storm from a decade ago. We're going to today announce that this will be permanent. This is going to be there as a place where we're thinking about the future but able to respond in the immediacy if this happens again, and make sure that the communities have the resources, not just when you need it in the storm, but also leading up to that. So the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery will become the Office of Resilient Homes and Communities, a larger scale. It's going to continue that work, but also fulfill our responsibility to New York's families by being ready for these events in the future. And I promised I would do this in our State of the State, and I'm announcing also that we're releasing our report, our 10-year report on our state's progress after Sandy recovery and our resiliency. You know why you do a report? Because you have to learn the lessons. You have to say what went on here, what did we do right, what can we do better? We're always pushing ourselves to do better. And the state has already spent 91% of the $4.5 billion appropriation, completing more than 11,000 recovery and resiliency projects. But we're not through yet. We also have to continue helping these small businesses because they are not just battered by Sandy, they're also battered by the pandemic. I heard that as I walked the streets once again today. So to many mom and pop shops, the restaurants, the cafes, as I went down to Platinum Plus Unisex Hair Care, where our own borough president gets his hair done. You get this done every week? Guess they did a really good job. You had one really good visit, huh? And the corner coffee shop, a mother and a daughter who've been there 36 years, and they never gave up. So just to stop by and let us know that they've built back just as we're building back the future. So as you know, we also have training programs. I encourage everybody to be trained because, again, we live in a vulnerable area, a vulnerable time, and I'll continue to do whatever I can to focus on climate resiliency as part of our overall strategy as well. So I'm going to be giving out some of these nice to-go bags here. Take them with you, take them home for your kids, and make sure that you're ready. So residents, be ready. According to the calendar, we're winding down our hurricane season, except 10 years ago, it was just getting fired up. So I don't want to frighten anybody. We actually had our Hurricane Preparedness Summit this summer in anticipation, so it's always about being ready. So I would say follow emergency alerts on alert.ny.gov. Take one of our citizen preparedness courses. There's over 350,000 people have taken them, and it teaches the skills you need in a situation like that. So we're here today to say again, It's about the resiliency. And I'm looking out at a group of people who are the most resilient in our country. You have been through so much, but Mother Nature could never, ever take you down. And as your governor, I'm proud to represent you. I'll be there for this community to help lift all of you up. But it started in places like this with people like Reverend Dr. Mullins, and I want to call him up at this time and officially thank him for everything he did for our community. Reverend Mullins. Kristen, we want the First Lady here as well. You deserve to share in this. Where's the First Lady of our church? There she is.